It is a pleasure to be here, James. Of course, we've worked together years ago.
Oh, yeah.
You supplied the furs for an ad that I did for Reunity Wine,
Right.
one of the most luxurious furs I've ever had on.
And that was one of the best ads.
It's wonderful. You know, you've been in the business for over 50 years. You've had the most illustrious career. How did you begin? What was the first decision that you made to get into the fur industry?
Well, I think it was because as a young fella, 13, 14, 15 years old, I went to work for a furrier, but not to become a furrier. That was just a job that any young fella might take. Then I went in the Army, and I was in the Army for 3.5 years. When I came out of the Army, I went back to work for the same furrier, and he promised to teach me the craft, and he did. It was in Yonkers, New York. So after working with him for about 8 or 9 years, I decided that I wanted to venture out and try something on my own.
And so after that, and I know that there was a lot of struggle involved as a black furrier, and I must also say once again, you're among a handful of black furriers in the industry, am I correct? You're the only
Right.
wholesaler?
Right, the only wholesaler.
How did you build your clientele back then?
Word of mouth, because I didn't have money. You see, some people build a clientele by advertising, but I didn't have advertising money. So what I did, I just had everybody that I made something for recommended me to somebody else, and I kind of obligated them to do that. And they wanted to do it because they were in the business of trying to help me get started too.
Your first store that you owned was in Harlem?
Yes, on 150th Street and Broadway. And I went to 150th Street and Broadway because I knew that white people wouldn't buy it from me, and I'd better be in an area where I could have some customers.
You know, it's interesting because you also, each fur is designed by you. It's a unique design. It's not just any old fur coat, am I correct? In other words, you put uniqueness into your furs. How do you do that? I mean, how do you create a fur coat?
Well, it's a love that's been with me, as I said, ever since I was 14 or 15 years old. And some things become second nature. And the fur industry, to me, is part of my lifeline. So it's very easy when you're doing something that you like. As a matter of fact, I tell most people, if you have a job or a career and you could like it enough to say that if I wasn't making a living at it, I'd do it anyway, then you're in the right field, and that's where I'm at.
All the upheaval that's been happening in the fur industry, how has that affected your business?
Well, I would say that my business has been deeply affected by the recession more so than the upheaval, because black people were not really a part of the animal rights movement. It was the type of thing where black people all their life have been told what to do and what not to do. So they really were not a big part of that. Now, some of the younger children of the older blacks have some portions been a part of it, but not the older people, not at all.
You still have a very distinctive clientele, all right? I mean, I see all kinds of people, celebrities, sports figures that come in and out of this posh salon. So tell us about some of those distinctive clientele members you have.
Well, I would say that having been in business for over 30 years for myself, that I've managed to have met a lot of people in many different walks of life, as far as athletes are concerned, or musicians are concerned, and even some very heady politicians are concerned. So I have had my share, but likewise, most of that came from word of mouth too, where they would wear something that I made, or they saw it in the Ebony Fashion Show, which I've been a part of for 11 years, or the Congressional Black Caucus, which I've been a part of for about 12 years, or some of those other major shows like with Dorothy Height and the National Council of Negro Women. All of these things, I've tried to give something black to the black community, and they in turn have given me something.
Buying a fur coat is an investment. So now when one is in the market for a fur coat, what advice would you give them when they come into your salon? How do you help them select a fur coat?
Well, the first thing I say to anybody that buys a fur coat, whether they come to me or anybody else, if they're really serious about it, they should go to a fur shop. See, there are a lot of furs out there for a lot of different prices, and it's very confusing to the person that doesn't understand that coat that said it's marked down thousands of dollars, that may not necessarily be. So if you go to a fur shop, you got a better chance for somebody to explain to you what really makes the difference in the fur garment, because the very bottom line is that after you lay your money out, am I going to get my proper service from this particular fur coat. And most furriers, they want you to have service from it because they want repeat business to be around for a long period of time.
In care, now I used to hear that if when you're buying a fur coat, one of the things you could do was blow at the fur, and if it flowed nicely, that means it was a real fur coat. I mean, what's one tip in checking to see if it's a real fur coat? What's one thing that you could?
As I said before, fur is a blind item, and it really is a blind item. So if you want to get fooled, you just have to think that you know it, and then that's going to trick you up.
Right.
As a matter of fact, not only furs, you just look at the diamond industry. I've been buying things like that in my life. I bought a few, but I can't tell you what the value of it is. They all look alike.
Exactly. When you're caring for fur, what are some of the things that you should do after you've purchased that fur? Because, of course, you need to store it in the summertime. Is it cold storage is the best and the only thing?
Right. Cold storage is a must if you're going to have a fur coat and you want it to last for any length of time without drying out. So actually, I have a fur storage, and I keep most of my coats that come in that fur storage just for that reason. So I would say that that's primary, that's the main thing if you have a fur coat, so that when you're not wearing it, it should be put away with a Furrier that has a cold storage.
Besides running 2 posh salons, one here in New York City as well as Mount Vernon, how do you find the time to run around to doing all kinds of charitable events? I mean, you routinely donate coats to all types of charitable organizations. How do you find the time to keep as busy as you do?
Well, once again, as I said, if you're doing something in life that you like, you always have time to do it. A lot of times we procrastinate because we don't really want to do it. But if you like something, it's not an effort. You can find as much time as you need if it's something that you like doing. And I think I owe a lot to the black community because really my business would not have stayed around if it wasn't for black people. There are some people that have businesses that they can say that a big portion of their business was white. I would have to say 35 years ago my business was 100% black, and now 35 years later it's probably still 80% black.
You spend a lot of time lecturing the youth, the black youth, in schools, okay? I'm sure you find that very rewarding to go around to different schools and give lectures.
Yes, I would say that that's probably one of the nicest things that I have to do in this particular industry, because a lot of young black kids have to know that they can get up off the ground and do something for themselves. And a lot of times when they hear a story from a fellow like me that lived in the project and didn't have a father from the age of 5, his father left him, and I've made some headway in my life, then they a lot of times can identify with that. So I like to go back and talk about those kind of things and about those very honest beginnings. And I think you always do catch somebody. You catch a few anyway. In terms of buying a fur, this happens to be the best time ever for anybody to buy a fur coat. In all of my 35 years, you could never get the kind of value that you get today, because with the readjustment of the recessions and things like that, and the toppling of prices, a good fur coat that I used to get $6,000 for at one time, that same coat can be had today for $3,000 or $3,200. Right.
Thank you, James.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. Thanks again.
I happen to have on one of the James McQUAY furs. Needless to say, it is absolutely gorgeous. And I do want to say that Mr. James McQUAY himself is the picture of success.